Yeah, inflation is going to be like a parasite that gobbles up everything in its path. So let's just take your primary residence, for example. That's usually people's greatest asset, at least as you're accumulating wealth. So let's say right now, because interest rates are so low, that you can afford a mortgage of $350,000. Well, the reason you can afford it is because from a cash flow standpoint, you can service that debt from month to month, and it's fixed for 20, 30 years, however much, whatever time frame you use. Well, let's say, okay, so you're buying a house right now. This is where you're seeing these stories of bewilderment, like, this house went for $63,000 over asking. This one went for $100,000 over asking. Well, let's take that same family a year from now, and there's been 4 interest rates hikes, hypothetically. Now that same family can't afford $350,000 to service the debt. Maybe it's $275,000. So your neighbor sees this, and he's selling his house, and he's like, these people can only afford $275,000. So that's what he puts his house on the market for, and he gets it. Well, all of a sudden now you're panicked because you have this asset that you think is worth $350,000. Really, in this new market or interest rate environment, it's worth $275,000, and it's not very liquid. Meaning, we're right now houses are selling like hotcakes. All of a sudden, they aren't selling that much anymore. Everyone's kind of sitting tight because you don't have to sell your house, right? Same thing can happen. So that's fixed rate debt, but there's a lot of debt right now in the atmosphere, margin debt, private company debt, that's floating rate. So that's really what I'm worried about with the interest rate hikes, because that's what can really start to affect American small businesses, individuals, because all of a sudden, your rates were sitting at 1+ Fed funds or 4+ LIBOR, and you could afford it. Well, with those interest rate hikes, that can get pretty scary pretty quick to just service that debt on a month-to-month basis. That's when it starts to, when I say parasite, inflation's like a parasite, that's when it really starts to affect everything. So that's why it's really, really important to understand what kind of stress test the debt that you have right now. How do I pressure test this in different inflationary environments, or if interest rates were to go up 4% or whatever it could be? What is this really going to look like for me and my family, to make sure that you're doing all that you can to protect yourself when times are good?